Friday, January 24th, 2020, Maneco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. This morning I want to talk about why the major banks in the US, in the UK, and Europe, major Wall Street banks, are still not a safe place to put your money in. I would argue also the other banks, as a result, also are not a safe place to keep too much of your earnings and fiat money in. Of course, it doesn't mean you can't have a bank account for your day-to-day expenses, your monthly expenses. I'm not saying you need to get out of the system, because I'm not out of the system completely. But if you do have spare savings, take it out of the system. Don't have everything in the stock market. Have some precious metals or any other tangible asset that you can touch, even real estate, unencumbered by mortgage or land, antiques, fine wine, not just gold and silver. And I want to look at The Big Short, one of my favorite movies in the last few years. I've watched it a few times. And towards the end of the movie, if you've watched it, you probably remember when everything is imploded. Lehman's collapsed. They put this scene on that says, and after everything, the bankers were put in jail. The banking system was reformed. And, no one got their bonuses. They were, and then it just switches and says, "No, you were wrong. Everything stayed the same. The bankers were bailed out. They kept their bonuses. Their bonuses got even bigger afterwards." So yes, that's why I think the banks are not safe still. Since the '08 crisis, nothing was really done seriously to rein in the greed and the mismanagement by the bankers. They're still at it. None of them has gone to jail. And their bonuses are getting bigger, and that's why they're not safe. There wasn't a breakup of the banks into investment banking and commercial banking, or the bringing back of Glass-Steagall. And yesterday we had a headline that again tells us that the bankers, all they have to do is pay a big fine and never face the music, even though what they've done can be considered criminal activity. They're not forced to say that they were guilty or not guilty. They just paid the fine. So yesterday we had the ex-CEO of Wells Fargo, Warren Buffett's bank. And I remember this case well when it came out a few years ago. They were creating, Wells Fargo, fake accounts for their clients. And their clients didn't know they had these accounts, so they weren't aware that they had to pay fees for these accounts. So they got penalized for not paying the fees on accounts they didn't even know they had. So this is what Wells Fargo did. And the regulators basically made the ex-CEO, John Stumpf, or Stumpf, I'm not sure. I would pronounce it Stumpf, as it's a German word, but the Americans probably pronounce it Stumpf. John Stumpf had to pay $17 million in fake account scandal. So yes, and he was banned from banking, working at any bank in the US. But I think John Stumpf should be behind bars. So let's go through the article here. I'm going to go through the Wall Street Journal one. There is one in the FT. A regulator barred former Wells Fargo chief executive John Stumpf from the banking industry and fined him $17.5 million over the firm's fake account scandal, an extraordinary sanction for a top executive at a large bank. I don't think it's extraordinary. Wall Street Journal. I think what would have been extraordinary would be to prosecute him for criminality. If you and I did something like this, we'd be criminally charged, probably indicted and prosecuted. But he's just paid a fine. I'm sure he's got a lot of money stashed away still. He's still independently wealthy. Goes on to say, Mr. Stumpf agreed to the lifetime ban in a settlement with the Office of the Controller of the Currency. I guess the bankers can pay their way out of criminality. And believe me, I'm not against bankers. I was one for many years in the city of London. I think banking is something that is needed in a modern, industrialized society, economy. You need banking. But when bankers resort to criminality, they need to be put in jail. They need to pay for their crimes. And I'm sorry, creating fake accounts and charging your customers for it doesn't seem like it's not a criminal activity to me. So let's have a look here. Continue. The firm's former chief administrative officer and chief risk officer settled similar civil charges, and 5 other former executives, including the former consumer bank chief, were also charged. The sanctions against Mr. Stumpf are noteworthy because few top bank executives have faced penalties of this scale in recent years. Banks paid tens of billions of dollars in fines for conduct during the financial crisis, but enforcement efforts drew criticism from some observers because of a lack of charges against individuals. So there you go. Yes, it was a harsh penalty, but he's still a free man. He's not in jail. In Iceland, when the banking system collapsed, and granted, Iceland is a smaller country, 300,000 people, but they jailed the bankers. In the US, in the UK, in Europe, the bankers are still free. We've got a banker now, president of the ECB, who was charged of criminal offenses 4 years ago in France. Did she go to jail, Christine Lagarde? No. She was allowed to go back to work as head of the IMF, and now she's president of the ECB. So I'm not against bankers. I don't hate bankers. What I don't like, and this applies to any profession, people who commit crimes and get away with it by basically bribing the regulators, because that's what it is. You paying them to get away with fraudulent and I would say criminal activities. That's my opinion. Am I calling Stumpf a criminal? I guess legally and technically he isn't, but de facto, I'm sorry, what happened at that bank is criminal. So that's why I think they're going to keep getting away with it. That's why JP Morgan has paid billions in fines since 2002, like the Solari report addendum that I got with my last report showed 20 pages of fines, but no one going to jail. Yes, there's 1 or 2 traders that go to jail, but they're insignificant in the scheme of things. What we need to see are the people at the top face the music, and that's not happening. And that's why you need to be careful. You need to make sure you don't deal with the bankers as much as possible. Keep an eye on things as well. This doesn't mean that other banks are not trying to do the same thing, like creating false accounts. Make sure you check your statements. Make sure you check your online accounts, that there isn't anything fishy going on. And also try not to borrow from them. Yeah, I know some people need to borrow because they're not making ends meet, but try as hard as you can to live within your means. What that means basically is that you're less beholden to these people. And until something's done to clean up the banking system everywhere in the world, especially in the US and the UK, things are going to be unstable. Your money is not going to be safe in the bank. Even if you have the amount that's still protected by your FDIC or FSCS insurance here in the UK, you shouldn't really trust them. So with that, let's quickly look at where the markets are this morning. It's 7 past 8 a.m. Yesterday, we had another magical rally in the stock market towards the end of the day. After being down 200 points, the stock markets rallied. The Dow finished down only 26. S&P eked out a gain, and the NASDAQ as well finished up almost 20 points. Right now, we've got gold, 15.59 is down just over $3. The high overnight has been 15.64. Right now, we've touched 15.68 twice this week, so that's the resistance key level. Silver is still pretty weak, 17.77 here, down 2 cents. Range has been 1773 to 1783. 18 resistance, support I would say in the low 60s. The Dow's up 65. Yes, markets are supposed to correct and take a breather, but yeah, the stock market is different at the moment. It's so manipulated, it's so juiced up. The Federal Reserve has everyone's back. Even the government has everyone's back. We had Larry Kudlow saying they're going to increase the tax cuts, which basically means more deficit spending. So that's another reason why the stock market stays elevated. S&P up 7, 33.32. NASDAQ 100 future up 0.5%. It's crazy how the NASDAQ just keeps going up. It's at 92.60. Currencies, sterling is unchanged, 131.24. Euro, 110.54. Yeah, fairly quiet, the foreign exchange market. Dollars unchanged against the yen at 109.59. And the Chinese yuan, the dollar's down slightly versus the yuan at 692.45. Crude oil, fairly weak here. Back to a 55 handle, WTI, it's up overnight 1/3%. We're at 55.80. Brent 61.65, up 1/3 as well. I'll finish off with the bond market. 10-year yield up 1 basis point this morning at 175. So yeah, the US Treasury or bond market has been fairly quiet of late. There you go. Banks are not safe. The bankers haven't been punished, so it's like a child. If they do something wrong and you don't punish them for it, they're going to keep doing it. And that's what the bankers are going to keep doing. They're going to continue their reckless activity and sometimes even fraudulent activity, like creating fake accounts. And that's why you need to be careful when dealing with them. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. Please share it far and wide. Also, think about subscribing if you haven't subscribed yet to the channel. And you can also follow me on Twitter, BitChute, Steemit, and DTube. I wish you all a great day. Take care. Bye.